Hello and welcome to Balancing Act, Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl, a mental health and wellness and semi-unfiltered podcast made for teens by a teen. I'm your host, Morea, a 16-year-old girl from New York, and here on Balancing Act, I bring you weekly episodes featuring relatable conversations, personal stories, and practical insights to help you navigate life's balancing act and related challenges, and to remind you that you are not alone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Balancing Act, Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. This was my first episode that was actually planned, and so it will always hold a special place in my heart. In this episode, I am joined by Dr. Lisa Damour, a clinical psychologist and author specializing in the development of teenagers, especially girls, and young women. She has authored 3 New York Times bestsellers, Untangled, Under Pressure, and The Emotional Lives of Teenagers, and hosts her own podcast, Ask Lisa, The Psychology of Parenting, which all provide valuable insights for parents and caregivers as to the best ways to support their children through the challenges of adolescence. And something really cool that I learned after I recorded this episode with her was that she was actually a consultant for Inside Out 2. She was one of the psychologists that they consulted, and I think that is so cool. Okay, so in this episode, we talk about the stress that comes along with being a teenager and tips for recovering from stress. We talk about how to get support from others and how to support the people around you if they may be struggling. Dr. Damour also shares practical strategies on how to say no and to set boundaries if you're stretching yourself too thin. In this episode, we also chat about stress surrounding college and how to shift your mindset. And then to finish everything up, we talk about parental pressure and school strategies for how to do your best at school while exerting the least amount of energy. I learned so much from this episode. Like I said, it's the first one I recorded that was actually planned, and so I just had such an amazing time, and I hope you learn a lot from it. Let's dive into it.
So, in your books, you share really practical and invaluable advice for parents and caregivers on how to support their teenagers. But what advice do you have for teenagers who are experiencing this roller coaster? What can we do to support ourselves and our peers through these essential and demanding stages of development?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm really honored. Okay, so in terms of taking care of yourself and taking care of your friends, the first thing you can do to take good care of yourself is to recognize you're in a really stressful time of life. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong or anybody else is doing anything wrong. Being a teenager means living through a lot of change. You know, if you think about like an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old and you put them side by side, like they're not even from the same planet anymore, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of change in a very short period of time. And one rule we have in psychology is that change equals stress. And so you're in an inherently stressful time of life, just all
Yeah.
that change and navigating it. And then if you're serious about school and serious about stuff outside of school and, have a very full plate, this will be demanding. And I think it's important to start there because so often stress gets such a bad name that people feel stressed and then they get stressed about being stressed. You're just stressed. You don't have to be stressed about being stressed. It's a lot, but on its own, it's not bad. The thing I want you to do is have really good recovery.
Yeah.
Stress can be healthy, it can be growth giving, but you have to have adequate opportunity for recovery. And the metaphor I love is to think about this like strength training. You go to the gym, you lift heavy weights. It is literally stressful. That is exactly what you're there for. And so long as you can let those muscles rest and repair, you're just going to get stronger. If you don't, if you never take a break, if you keep hitting those same muscles day after day, you will get injured. And so my guidance to teenagers is to, first of all, just be accepting. There's a fair bit of stress that's just built into your lives. And get really serious. How do you restore yourself? Are you getting enough sleep? The leisure you have, does it leave you feeling better? Are you able to enjoy your rest guiltlessly? One
Yeah.
thing I notice about teenagers is, especially really hardworking ones, is that they'll work really hard. And then when they're taking a break, they'll feel bad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then I can't help you feel better, right? That's not restorative if you're feeling bad the whole time. So really working hard and then enjoying restoration and making sure your restoration leaves you feeling better at the end.
Yeah. So what would you recommend that teenagers tell themselves while they're, taking these breaks? Because I know I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist and it always feels like there's more that I have to do. And so I just can't like sit there and like not do anything.
So one thing I think that's really interesting is that what constitutes restoration is different for everybody. So I actually can't do anything either. Like I can't not do things. Like I am just a person who being busy I like and or it's just how I'm
Yeah.
built. So for me, restoration is things like going for walks or, cooking or things like that. That is stuff where I'm still busy and active, but it's a shift in the gears from working or doing the things that have taken it out of me. I envy people who are like novel on the beach people. I'll never be a novel on the beach person. And I've really come to terms with that. And that's okay. For me, restoration is actually going on a walk and often with a friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are a lot of people who feel like they're alone in their struggles and in their stress. And what advice would you have to teenagers who feel like they can't, share the fact that they're stressed with like a family member or with an adult because they just don't feel comfortable doing that or don't want to?
If a teenager doesn't feel comfortable sharing how they're feeling with somebody, it's usually because they've had an experience of it not going the way they wanted it to go. That maybe in the past they shared and they got guidance or advice or criticism. And so they're like, well, that left me feeling worse there.
Yeah.
What we all need are people in our lives, and sometimes it's our family, but sometimes it's not, where we can just tell the truth about what we're going through. And the person cares and is supportive and lets us sort of process it, that they don't take it on or they don't make it worse. And so my challenge there would be find the person. And it can be just one person
Yeah.
that you can share those things with. And it makes a big difference.
And how can we, like, as maybe a friend to a person that we see is stressed out, how can we be there to support them? Is it more helpful just to listen and not to like try to like offer any solutions?
I think it can be. And I think you can say, what would help most? Do you want me to listen? Do you want suggestions? Want to go for a walk? Want to go get some fries? Something that tastes good and is comforting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We were talking about friends before. The thing I do want teenagers to watch out for is how much they take on from their friends. I am so aware of how incredibly loving you are with one another and how far you go to support one another. And I want to propose that there's 5 things, and I'll tell you what they are, that if you know about them in a friend, don't dig it up. Help that person get help. Okay, so their depression or suicidality for sure, self-harm, eating disordered behavior, out of control behavior on the weekends. So, like, I am realistic. I understand that teenagers drink. I'm talking about teenagers who scare other teenagers
Yeah.
and dangerous relationships, romantic or otherwise. If you know about one of these 5 things in yourself or a friend, an adult needs to know. And it's not because we're adults and you're teenagers. It's because these need to be cared for by somebody with specialized training. And the
Yeah.
adult can get you or your friend to the person with specialized training.
Yeah.
So part of taking good care of oneself is not taking on a friend's depression, not feeling like you're responsible for standing between a friend and an eating disorder, and getting the support your friend deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So eating disorders in teenage girls have reached unprecedented levels in recent years and are a topic that are especially important to like me and my podcast because I've struggled with an eating disorder for many years. So, what do you think has influenced this spike in eating
Mm.
disorders?
So I'm comparatively slow to blame social media for things. There are people who get it a lot faster than I do. This, mm, I have some concerns. And I will say it's because a lot of where we saw this big spike started in the pandemic
Yeah.
when kids were home, when they had time on their hands, when they were lonely, they were bored, they needed to do something productive. And we saw a lot more kids getting very serious about changing their bodies. And we saw a lot more kids spending a lot of time looking online, which of course I get, like, what else are you gonna do? And, I worry that the algorithms on social media shifted the norms of what people saw. Lots of
Definitely.
ultra thin, lots of ultra fit, and it
Yeah.
changes what you think bodies look like, and then it changes what you think your body should look like.
Yeah. How would you recommend that somebody support their friend? I know you said that, of course, find an adult, but after you found an adult, is there any way that you could support your friend? Like, what should you and should you not say, or is it really dependent on the person?
Probably depends, but I think there's something you can say to anybody about all sorts of things, which is, "I love you and I want you to take really good care of yourself."
Yeah.
And if you're eating nothing but celery, or if you're running 15 miles a day, you are not taking good care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your book, Untangled, you also talk about like the unique challenges that teenage girls especially face just because of, society's expectations. And I think you talked about how they use their parents as like kind of trash can. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on like the way that society shapes the self-image and mental health of teenage girls, especially.
I think we put a lot on teenage girls. I think
Yeah.
we expect you to be amazing, and so then you are. I mean, I think the teenage girls are, like, just crushing it in every way, like, academically and athletically and leadership and science. I mean, it's, like, really extraordinary in arts. I think in addition to being spectacular in all of these, school-related or extracurricular things, I think we also send you strong messages that we want you to also be gorgeous and slim
Yeah.
and fit. And then on top of all that, I think we also send you messages, "Oh, and we want you to be quite agreeable." Right? Don't be cranky. Don't say no to people who want you to do things. Don't, make people comfortable. Do make people comfortable.
Yeah.
Don't be grumpy. And I think it's too much.
Yeah. And what do you think can be done to change the messages that teenage girls feel like they're receiving from just everyone around them in terms of like, you need to do this and this while also balancing 5 other things?
I think it's hard. But what I would say is we all have to think about what we want for ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes what we want for ourselves actually lines up with what somebody else wants, right? Maybe like you're like, actually, I do care about school and I'm serious about it. And I want that for myself. And it turns out my folks also want that too. But I think this question of like, what should my body look like? Or should I agree to like do this thing just so this person's not annoyed with me? Right. I think that those get to bigger questions like, well, what honestly, like kind of what's in this for me? Like why would I do what reason would I have for my own reasons to do this? I think another thing that can make a really big difference is helping girls get better at turning things down. But I think the guidance has to be realistic. I do not say, "Well, just say no." Just tell the person, "No, you're not gonna do it." Because, like, I know full well, like, you're just gonna pay a price for that, right?
Yeah.
That people are gonna be pissy about it if a girl does that. And so one thing I really developed and encourage is having strategies for turning things down in a way that leaves it in a really good place. And I learned about this most from a business book called The Power of a Positive No. And it's this like wonderful formula, and I use it about 7 times a day, and it makes my
Wow.
life a lot better. So here's the formula: yes, no, yes. So yes is what
Okay.
you're trying to do more of. No is
Mhm.
what you have to turn down, and yes is what you can offer. And so for me right now, I'm trying to work less. I'm working way too much. So
Yeah.
I have to say no to things. But then the yes is like, what could I offer? So I was just asked to be on an advisory board. And I said, oh, thank you so much for thinking of me. I'm trying to get my workload under control, so I have to say no. But don't hesitate to run stuff by me. I'm glad to give you a quick opinion.
Yeah.
So, like, you can leave it on that good front. So, I think, somebody calls you and insists that you babysit, and you can say, Oh, I wish I could that night. I'm not available, but I have a friend who's looking for babysitting jobs. Do you want his number? Right?
Yeah.
That having that, like, oh, I have this thing and thank you so much. And let me offer you this other thing instead. The other thing I do all the time, people ask me for all sorts of like, do you know this? Do you know that? And I was like, oh, it's not at my fingertips, but I'm going to keep my ears open. And if I come across it, I'm going to let you know. And then weirdly, I often do come across it. And then I'm like, here it is. But I'm not going to go do the Google search that they
Yeah.
probably should have done themselves.
I guess it's really just about, knowing yourself and knowing your own limits and what you're capable of and what you're not so capable of. How would you recommend, like, so I myself tend to be a bit of a people pleaser, and it's like, oh, yeah, I can do that. How do you recommend we kind of separate what we can do from what we're like trying to convince ourselves that we can do?
Well, so one thing we have to say is, in terms of energy, in the moment, it's often easier to say yes. Like turning somebody down and making space, like takes energy and work. Like, even my, like, I do this 3-part formula. Like, it's a lot of work to do it. And I'm just better at it because I do it a lot. But coming up
Yeah.
with these things is like demanding. And often, and less as I practice this, I would say yes, because it was just easier to do in the moment
Yeah.
than constructing a really thoughtful no.
Yeah.
So one thing I think that gets in our way is we say yes in terms of protecting our energy in the moment, but then set ourselves up down the line. So
Yeah.
I think one thing we can do is have like, I sometimes will write out my different strategies. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I'm really honored. My plate is over full right now. Wishing you the best of luck with your project, right? So that's my version, but you could have a version. And so if that is available to you, it takes away some of the friction of turning things down right away. The other way to know how much you should do is how much you are sleeping.
Yeah.
You are supposed to be at your age getting about an average of 9 hours of sleep a night.
Wait, what?
I know. Way, way more. No, 9 for high school, average 10, average for middle school, 11 average for elementary school.
Wait, what?
I know.
I'm happy when I get in 8 hours. That's like
Okay.
my
So, only
wow.
9's the average, but so I'm a big believer in if you're not able to get the sleep you need to take stuff off your plate.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to measure how much you can do.
And how would you recommend going about taking things off your plate? Especially because, right now it seems like the point of high school is to get you into a good college. And people feel like if they sacrifice one like extracurricular or something that they're doing, that's gonna jeopardize their chances of getting into a good college, which is gonna mess them up for the rest of their life. So how would you recommend like kind of confronting that
Sure.
mindset?
Right. Let's work backwards.
Okay.
The research shows it's probably a good idea to go to college. If you can go to college, there's benefits to going to college. So for people who have the option and the interest, I would suggest going to college. There's no question in my mind, and I really am honest about this. What you do in college matters more than where you go to college.
Yeah.
By the time you're about age 25, nobody knows where you went to college. All that is still left is what you did with the experience.
Yeah.
So you could go to Princeton and do an okay job with it or not do an okay job with it. By the time you're 25, no one will know you went to Princeton unless you're the one bringing it up. And how hard you worked and what you learned is actually going to be what you're riding on. You
Yeah.
could also go to a very accessible college. And if you work hard, learn a lot, that will show in what you're doing at age 25. So I want to give one little exception that I hope this is changing. I will tell you for sure, I really mostly don't think it matters where you go to college. I really, really don't think. Okay. But I'm also compulsively honest. So I want to give you a totally true story. I myself went to Yale
Yeah.
and I would not get in today. Let me just say that. The admission rate when I was admitted was 21%. It is now 5-ish%.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I run into somebody who changes for the better their opinion of me when they realize where I went to college.
Wow.
I don't love it. I won't say it has hurt me in my life. It also probably tells me a lot about that person. So I don't want to say it does not matter because even at this point in my life, I still run into people where like they're like, oh, right. And I'm like, okay, really? Like I'm 53, I've done some things, right? And this still matters. But for some people, it still matters. But let's just see what we can to do away with the idea that if you do not go to the college, one of 25 colleges, your life will be ruined. That is not a true thing.
Yeah.
It is not a true thing.
I know a lot of people think that they have to do amazing in every single thing that they do in school. How do you begin to shift your mindset to be like, in some of these classes, if the work's just good enough, then that's fine. And then I don't have to like stay up till midnight every night, like working on
Mhm.
all of my homework.
Okay, so there's two ways to slice this. One is if you're like, but I do want to try that person, right? I'm not going to stop you. Realistically, you probably do need to get incredible grades. Like that is realistic.
Yeah.
You also could get total straight A's, spectacular scores, all but cure cancer and not get into Princeton. Because Princeton's admission rate is around 5%, which means 95% of the applicants are turned down, and probably 95% of those guys are totally qualified, right? So it's not that it's not an option, but it's not something you can make happen by working hard.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if that's what you want to shoot for, go for it, but be very realistic that no matter what you do, the odds are stacked against you. Okay. So a person might say, like, I still want to go for it. I still want to put myself in a position to do it. Okay, that's fine. Then you need to be as strategic as you absolutely can about getting the best grades possible while doing the least work available. So if you are like shooting the lights out, have a really high score in a class and can afford to like not do as well on the next test, put all your energy somewhere else. Like play it, think of it like a video game. You want you want an A in every class. Okay, what's the least amount of work you have to do in each class to get that A? I'm not going to tell you don't try for the A if you want the A. So that's one approach. The other approach is to say, you know what? I could do all that, and there's still no guarantee by any measure that I'm going to get what I want in terms of college admissions. Good news is our country is drowning in fabulous schools that will readily admit you. I happen to live in Ohio, right? We are tripping over Denison and Kenyon and Oberlin and Ohio Wesleyan. And I mean, like all of these wonderful, wonderful schools where admission is actually possible. Oberlin's hard, but other schools that are more accessible, people come get fantastic educations here.
Yeah.
Their lives are not ruined. So there's another version where you just say, I'm going to do my darndest. I will go to college. I will learn and grow the whole process all along the way. I will live a rich, full life. And I don't need to stay up all night seeing if I can get Ace in every class.
Yeah. So, something that I noticed you kept saying when you were talking about that is like, I want to get the A. And how do you separate what you want from like what maybe your parents want? Because I know so often it can feel like you genuinely want everything that your parents are telling you that you should want.
Yeah. Well, and they may want it. They may want it. And I think that may then turn into some important conversations about at what price,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if it means you can't sleep, if it means you're sick, if it means you're miserable,
Yeah.
and you and your folks can have a good conversation about is it worth it, given that you are well positioned to thrive
Yeah.
at any college you go to and to thrive after going to any college.
Yeah. And what advice would you have for teenagers who realize, like, this isn't what I want? Like, I don't want to be, like, going to med school. Like, I want to pursue something more arts related. How would you recommend that they handle that when it comes to like a relationship with a parent if the parent is very insistent that they follow a certain path in their life?
I think that's super hard, right? And it happens. But I also think there are ways that it can be approached that give the parent the best opportunity to handle it well, right? The teenager might say,
Yeah.
I know this is what you want from me, and I know it comes from a loving place, but I'm not sure it's what I want, and I'm wondering if we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes really hard to feel like you can talk about how you're feeling, like, especially with other people who, may be in positions of more power. And it feels like mental health is still, it's getting better, but it's still kind of a stigmatized, topic. What do you feel like can be done to destigmatize conversations about mental health? Because it's something that, everybody has emotions. And like, how would you recommend we kind of promote more discussions about mental health among everyone?
So I think what's really important is exactly what you said, that emotions are part of life and negative emotions are actually a part of life.
Yeah.
And we're sort of in this weird place in the culture where, and I think I may share this with your class when we met, like we
Yeah.
talk about like mental health's about feeling good. No, it's not. Mental health's about having feelings that fit what's happening and then managing those feelings well. So if I were the queen of everything, I'd be like, you know what? Everybody gets to be upset. Everybody gets to be frustrated. Everybody gets to be annoyed. These things are happening. There's nothing we can do about it. The goal is that when it
Yeah.
happens, you handle it in a way that brings relief and does no harm, right?
Yeah.
Walking, going for a run, watching a TV show, listening to music, whatever helps you feel about art, and that you don't handle it in a way that brings relief but comes at a cost.
Yeah.
Substances, being hard on other people, being bad to yourself. The negative emotions, they're just happening.
So, if you had one piece of advice for your teenage self, what would it be?
You've got time.
Yeah.
You've got time, right? I think that that's the hard thing about being in intense schools is it makes you feel like you got to get it all figured out right this minute. I have enjoyed my 40s tremendously. I am enjoying my 50s tremendously. I have got better at what I do decade over decade. You're just getting started. You don't have to have it
Yeah.
all figured out.
Thank you so much for your time. It was so amazing to discuss these topics with you. And I feel like I've learned a lot and that, listeners can learn a lot too. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Balancing Act featuring Dr. Lisa Damour. Like I said before, this was the first planned episode that I recorded, so this episode has a special place in my heart. Here are my biggest takeaways from our conversation. 1. Recovering from stress looks different for everyone, but allowing yourself the time to recover from stress is so important in helping you to manage it. 2. Sleep is so important, and it's okay to cut things out if you're not getting enough sleep, which is apparently 9 to 10 hours for us. I didn't know that. That's also really scary. 3. The college that you get into does not necessarily dictate the rest of your life, and it's more about what you do in college and not so much about where you go. And 4. We have time to figure it out. I know that literally everyone around us says that, but could it actually be true? Thank you for listening to this episode of Balancing Act, Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone it could help, please feel free to share it with your loved ones or on social media. You can find us on Instagram at balancingact.podcast or on our website balancingact.life, which are both linked in the description. If you really want to support the podcast, leaving us a rating, hopefully a good one, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify would be invaluable. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, or if you want to suggest a topic or person for a future episode, please feel free to reach out to us through social media, our website, or email, which you can find on the website. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, And remember, life's a balancing act, and sometimes you fall on your face, but you are not alone.